Edwin, welcome to the Jehu Garcia podcast. You are a researcher, a writer, right? You're a prolific writer. You've written more than 200 titles?
It's 200 editions.
Oh, 200 editions. Okay.
So it's about 12 books.
Ah, okay.
Some of them are in 20 or 30 editions, like IBM and the Holocaust is in Japanese, Chinese,
okay.
Many other countries. So each of those is editions, and it's about not quite 2 million copies in print.
Wow, that's quite a bit. Yeah. How long have you been doing this for? When did you start writing?
50 years ago.
50 years ago. Yes. So I'm glad to be talking to you, an author, because let me set it back a little bit. I am primarily a YouTuber, right? I'm a tinkerer. I like to learn things here. I grew up wanting to be a filmmaker. But then I started doing these technical stuff, like my interests. And then people started getting inspired by that. And so they started asking me how they could learn what I'm doing, And I thought, well, I don't know, you just do it. I mean, that's how I learn. I'm just doing it. And that people think that's a weird answer. They're like, no. Is there a book? Is there a course that you can take in this subject matter that you're becoming an expert or whatever? And I'm like, I don't think so, no. So eventually, enough people were watching my stuff that a few people wrote books using some of my research as a base for it, right? And they would send those copies to me. And one guy in particular, I got the book, and I was like, oh my God, this guy, it's everything that I'm doing, everything that I'm discovering, it's right here in this book. I'm like, wow, this is great. So then I started recommending that book to people and to my viewers. And next thing I know, I'm selling thousands of books, through affiliates on Amazon, right? And then I started thinking like, I should probably write a book. But the task seems daunting to me. I'm like, wait a minute, like, it's just not just anybody writes a book, like, and like, how does this work? So now that you're here, I'm like, how does one go about writing a book? Because it seems like you have to be well versed in a subject, right? So it means that like there's a ton of research that you have to do to write a book, right?
Let me give you the advice that I commonly give to the many people who ask me how to become an author and how to be a writer and how to write a book.
Okay.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Okay. All right.
It is, first of all, there's no money in writing books unless your name is Jeff.
Really? Jeff's? Well, we could always change that name. I mean.
No, Jeff.
Jeff. Okay.
Jeff Bezos.
Oh, well, that's true. Yes.
Okay. So to write a book, you need to be, you need to master your topic. Generally, 99% of what you know is left out of the book that you're writing. Your book must be timely and timeless.
Timeless.
The books that I'm writing now will be discussed for the rest of my life. And the books that I wrote in the 1980s and 1990s have been discussed every day of my life since then. The topic of the book that we're discussing today, which is internal combustion, is one that I wrote in 2006. So it's 17 years ago. Mm-hmm. So when you write a book, you have to be able to eternally defend what you have written for its accuracy and precision. You have to be able to do so at a moment's notice. Yes. And you need to make a difference in an indifferent world. And if you start with that, then you have the ingredients necessary to approach a topic. But there's a great deal of sacrifice. It's the only reward is knowledge, integrity, and and the and and the satisfaction that you are changing the world for the better by providing information or illumination.
Yes. Yeah. So see, I guess I share a little bit of your view because when I look at writing a book, I'm like, wait a minute, this is not, you can't just like write a book like, oh, I think I know what I'm talking about and then just write it, right? I think there's a lot of people probably that do write like that, but that's probably not what I wanted to do, right? And I thought like,
Listen,
no,
listen. Typing and writing are two different things.
yeah, okay,
Any
yeah,
just because you have a piano doesn't mean you're a concert pianist.
yes,
So the the ability to write, to publish, the ability to have your stuff uh, cross examined, these are talents that have to become skills, and they're not recommended. So anyone can get a book published these days. You can vanity press. Anyone can do a YouTube. I suppose you can make a YouTube. Even I have a YouTube now.
yeah.
And but as far as publishing goes, it's deadly serious. You're not allowed to make a mistake. And if you make a mistake, it can be very costly. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no saying I'm sorry in publishing.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. And there's no money, right? I did see the Amazon thing where Amazon has been very aggressive towards publishing houses. They've been kind of putting a lot of people out of business uh, in a lot of markets and
Well,
even
let
in the
me deal
publishing.
with a topic that's close to you. I've done investigations of General Motors. I've accused of corporate criminality, genocide, being traitors to this country, arming the Nazis. I've um, I've investigated Honda for subverting CNG cars and subverting the home refuelers. I have exposed Ford for its association with the Nazis, with Adolf Hitler. And that's just on the automotive side. I've also exposed the Carnegie Institution for its involvement in genocide in the United States, the Rockefeller Foundation for similar grievous activities. So when you write this stuff, you have to be bulletproof.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to say I'm 0 for 50.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because
50 years, no retractions, no corrections, no
wow.
requests for corrections.
Okay. Yeah, because so you're throwing shade at some very powerful entities there. So
Yeah, don't
that's
forget IBM,
yeah, yes, okay.
which organized the Holocaust, all,
Yes.
all 6 phases of the Holocaust. And I assure you, tomorrow morning, the lawyers of IBM and Honda and General Motors and Ford are not going to call you and say, "Why did you say that? Why did you say any of that?" What's
Yes.
the next question?
Wow, that's crazy. Okay. Well, yeah. So let's talk about the one subject or the one book that you wrote about the internal combustion, right? And the story about these companies. Well, these companies not doing the right thing in a lot of times. Um, yeah. How did you get interested in that subject?
I've done a lot of human rights. I've done Holocaust. I've done genocide. And so I tried to get off of that topic. And
Okay.
every time I tried to get off of that topic onto something of import, I found it was taking me right back to that topic. And
Okay.
so I decided to deal with oil addiction and Iraq. And what did I do? I found out that Iraq was very important in World War II. They had been a nexus of relationship with the Third Reich. They were involved in the Holocaust. I tried to get to eugenics, which was the attempt to wipe out 90% of the American population in favor of a white, blonde, blue eyed um, um, Anglo Saxon or Nordic superior race. That came right back to the Holocaust. That came right back to genocide. I went into oil addiction. I found that oil addiction has intersected genocide and oppression, uh, oil, fuel, energy throughout the centuries, and it revealed to me what had been done in the realm of batteries, in terms of illicit batteries, fake batteries, corporate production by the people, corporate corruption by the entities that were creating the batteries, and of course, General Motors. It was then that I realized that while General Motors was uh, committing grievous undermining of American mass transit, they were motorizing the Third Reich for the invasion of Europe. And not only did they build the Blitz truck for the Blitzkrieg, they also helped make the Jehu 88 bombers, the Panzer tanks, the torpedoes, and the landmines. This is one of America's greatest corporations. And of course, the same thing happened with with Henry Ford. So I always try to expand my portfolio, but the intersections kept coming back, and it always came to human rights. Now, I suppose if I were a gearhead, I could only be concerned with cylinder ratios and
Yes.
and compressions, but I'm going to leave that to you.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it is amazing that so much of our modern world has ties back to that, right? The World War II was like 65 years ago, 70 years ago now. What is it like? Something like that, right? And yeah, it's still all ties. You know, it's weird. I'm driving a car, an electric car, and it's. I mean, that's literally the Nazi car right there. It's such a weird thing. Like that was commissioned by Hitler himself, you know. So
He tried to create the people's car, the Volkswagen, but he never got it off the ground. The most popular car in Germany was the Opel, which was secretly controlled by General Motors.
Mm, okay. Yeah, so then he gave this to Porsche, right? And then they developed it and
Right. By that time, World War II was over. By
oh, I
the
see. See.
by by by, by the time the car had been proliferated, World War
Yeah,
II was over. But of course, they did have prototypes going
prototypes.
back to the Hitler era. One of the things you must understand is that the Third Reich, the Germans were not motorized. So they had all these fancy German cars, but they were museum pieces. They were made one at a time. In order for them to move to mass production, they needed the American secrets of mass production that were held by Henry Ford and General Motors. So that's what they did. These companies came to the Nazis and offered to motorize them. And remember, no Holocaust on horseback, no invasion, no invasion of Europe on horseback. So once they mass produced all of these vehicles for the Nazis, they needed to build something called the Autobahn. And once they had the Autobahn, they needed oil. There was no oil in Germany. So they had to make a common cause with the Arabs who would give them the oil. And that got them deep into the Middle East.
Yeah. So oil, yeah, oil's been pretty important for a long time. And would you think, what do you think the next energy? Because so it's energy, right? Essentially, that's what they needed to fuel the war, to fuel all their stuff, all their ambitions, to kill all those people, and you know, to whiten the world, essentially, right? What do you think the next fuel source is going to be? You think? I mean, there's oil to go around for the next 100 years, right?
We are not running out of oil.
We're not around.
But just remember that the use of oil is older than the existence of civilization itself. Uh, um, uh, Tens of thousands of years ago, cavemen were using oil in Blombus in South Africa uh, as an illuminant, as
Really?
a sealant. The the idea of using oil for illumination and even for vehicles was older than anything we know about in the United States. In the original oil came out of seeped out of rocks.
Mm.
There was an ooze, and that ooze was petroleum. So petra means rock, and oleum means oil. It would be gathered up and scooped up. The oil that you are thinking about, the oil that you are referring to, is industrial oil, oil that's drilled for. Once oil is drilled, it does the same thing. It must be utilized in the same way that you utilize a battery or electricity. When oil has a gusher, it can either be stored, transported, used, or it escapes.
Or wasted. Yeah.
Wasted. So the first oil gushers, industrial, were in Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania, in Titusville, Ohio, was in Titusville, Pennsylvania, rather, was like the Middle East of the 1860s and 70s. Oil reason really wasn't discovered wasn't discovered as a viable gusher until 1927. They suspected it was there in the late 19th century, and they knew it was there from the geologic studies, but they couldn't drill down and hit that gusher until 1927.
Ah, I see. Yeah, that's actually not that long ago. So yeah, most of these oil that we've been taking out of the ground has been since the 20s, or almost 30s, right?
No, the oil that we've been industrially drilling has been since the late 1860s, but
Oh,
it hasn't come out of. But it came out of Indonesia. It came out of Pennsylvania. The oil that from the Middle East didn't. There was a little bit of oil in 1908 in Persia, but it was highly sulfurated, so it really couldn't be used. The oil that we know of today that comes from the Middle East began in 1927.
27. And do you think there's plenty of oil there? Do you think
We haven't hit peak oil. It just depends how far down you want to go. You want to go below the seabed. You want to go 20 miles down. You want to go 8 miles down. The point is, how expensive will it be to get that gallon of oil? And remember, it's not just the extraction of oil. You have to transport the oil. So there is an externalized cost of oil and gasoline. You think you're paying $2, $3, $4 at the pump. The fact is, that's just the localized cost. You also have to put in the environmental cost. You have to put in the military cost, the transportation cost, the diplomatic cost. So imagine if you want to sell a battery.
Yeah.
You say the battery's $2, but in order to get that battery, you have to send the entire U.S. Navy
yes.
and the Fifth Fleet to escort it to your place in California. So now you see the true cost.
Yeah. Well, and one of the other arguments that comes up, like with renewables, is that the use of rare earth metals, right? So like cobalt. And isn't cobalt used in the refining process of crude oil? So to make gasoline, they have to use cobalt.
Well, I think where the rare earth materials come in more importantly are the fuel cells. And of course, that's something that's in your area. but they need these various rare earth metals to um, to help advance the fuel cells. And of course, that puts us in a predicament of saying, where are we going to get these? We're going to get these
Yeah.
in China. So once again, we're over we're under a diplomatic barrel.
Yeah, yeah. But I think it's also used in refineries. So, it's like it's not like we're not using these. These are rare, and they're scarce because once they're rare, but also because we're using it quite a bit. We're using, and so that's why I think the oil industry doesn't want these batteries because they're going to fight for some of these resources too. Um, and also with all the other metals and all the other things, right? That's why Elon wants to have that locally mined. He's bought some property here in the United States, I think in Nevada or something, and he's gonna try to mine some stuff here. Is that crazy? I mean, I don't know. Like, do you think batteries have future? I'm like looking at it from every angle that I can, and
It
I don't know
depends
much,
what
right?
you call. I mean, you can use the word battery, and you can use the word storage. I mean,
Yeah,
one day will. I mean, you can call it a battery. What is a battery? A battery is two disparate metals connected by an appropriate medium, and there is a charge and a discharge as they exchange along the way, and that creates the electricity. Now, there is no battery expert or scientist or a research and engineer anywhere in the world, and no one on your show who can explain why those particles charge and discharge. You
yeah,
can you can comprehend what they do, but you
yeah,
can't explain what they do. But there are many other ways to do storage. If you expand the concept of battery and just use the word storage, you can store heat in
yeah,
in in molten beds. You can store heat. There are people who want to store heat in nano. There are people who want to store energy in certain materials, which will absorb them and give them out. For heaven's sakes, there are people working on that in wearables where you'll have a micro amount of electricity. How much? Well, it might be enough to power your phone, might be enough to power your tablet. But the point is, every time you walk, every time you move, there'll be a little bit of uh, piezo electricity that is created. And all of this is part of the larger picture. We have to look at the biggest models of energy and storage and the tiniest ones.
yeah. Yeah. Also, I didn't hear you talk about mechanical batteries. So, there's this idea where like you can use like solar energy or something to like raise a big piece of like metal or something that's heavy, and then let it drop again, and then that'll run like a little generator, the same motor
I
that you
left out
used to.
99%.
Yes. Yeah. So there's quite a bit. They use that same concept in dams too, right? So they pump water up a dam that is higher in elevation than another one, and then they run the thing. And so there's batteries mean a lot of things, right? There's a lot of energy storage. I think the right now the hot issue is the lithium batteries, right? Because those are the most power dense, energy dense, right? And but they still a lot of them use some rare earth metals. They need nickel
Whatever
or cobalt.
battery is going to succeed is one you've never heard of.
Yeah,
These are batteries which are being developed today, which we have no idea if they're going to be involved with new forms of life, which are being developed uh, right near my home in suburban Washington, where they're trying to experiment with the creation of engineered um, uh, um, uh, um, microbes that can generate electricity. Um, there is bacterial energy. The amount of energy we can draw out of a bacterial reaction is very, very small, but it keeps getting more and more. We're talking about combining materials in different ways. So we're basically primitive in the idea of batteries. People come up with all sorts of materials, but really it's the material and the medium that we don't know yet that's going to revolutionize batteries, storage, and energy.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought Elon was going to talk about the next generation battery technology, right? In the battery day, I don't know if you were aware of that. Like a few months ago, he had a thing, and
I
he
was
did.
busy.
You were busy, and he didn't. He talked about the current lithium battery technology and how he plans to improve the current technology.
Well, because the current one is the one we have today.
Yeah.
So if we really want to advance, we don't want to actually just get to the top of the mountain and look out and speculate what's over the horizon. We want to actually get something done. So we have to use the best available solution today and get to another one tomorrow. But the naysayers are going to constantly call you up and say, "Oh, we can't get enough percentage out of it. This doesn't work. That doesn't work." It's all a work in progress, and it's been a work in progress for centuries.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, you have the limitations of reality, I guess. Um, what do you think of recently the Mars rover? NASA landed a rover, and that one had a nuclear battery, right? It creates
I was
heat.
just discussing a nuclear battery earlier this afternoon. Those batteries have been working flawlessly. Remember, how does a nuclear reactor work? Do you know, Jehu?
Just basic. It creates heat, and then heat is used to either create steam or
It,
the
it's a water boiler.
yeah, or that other thing where they use that piezo thing also could work, right? Because it creates heat, or it's called thermal coupler, I think, and it basically uses heat. It's one of these things that you can
So
actually put on the
the
fire.
the irradiated rod gives
Yeah.
off heat. It's put into water. That creates steam. It turns the turbine. If you had a
Yeah.
tea kettle, a giant tea kettle, it would do the same thing. But you're using uh, um, irradiated rods, and
Yeah.
those have extreme power. They last for what could be a quasi eternity in our terms, and as a result, they're a very, very efficient form of energy.
Yeah.
But they are dangerous.
When
They
things go bad, right?
when things go bad, they go very, very bad.
Yeah. Do you think the fear is warranted, right? Because we had a lot of power plants, right? Nuclear power plants in the country, and they were clean, they were efficient, but we had a couple of mishaps or a few mishaps
We
throughout
had
the
3
years.
Mile Island.
3 Mile Island.
We had a movie called The China Syndrome. We had Chernobyl.
Chernobyl, yeah.
We had Fukushima.
Fukushima, yeah. That's the last one that we all got to see unfold in front of our eyes, yeah.
And there have been other mishaps. It takes 8 years to get a nuclear reactor online, could be 16 years. So it's become an impossible dream. I believe we have to find a happy medium, because I can tell you right now, you are going to have oil spills. Every year we have small and large oil spills equal to one Exxon Valdez every year.
Wow.
If you want automotive transportation, 44,000 people a year are gonna get killed. If you want airplanes, there's going to be aviation mishaps.
Edwin, welcome to the Jehu Garcia podcast. battery, right? It creates
I was
heat.
just discussing a new.
Also could work, right? Because it creates heat, or it's called thermal coupler, I think, and it basically, yeah, uses heat. It's one of these things that you can
So
actually put on the
the
fire.
the irradiated rod gives
Yeah.
off heat. It's put into water. That creates steam. It turns to turbine. If you had a
Yeah.
tea kettle, a giant tea kettle, it would do the same thing. But you're using uh, um, irradiated rods, and
Yeah.
those have extreme power. They last for what could be a quasi eternity in our terms, and as a result, they're a very, very efficient form of energy.
Yeah.
But they are dangerous.
When
They
things go bad, right?
when things go bad, they go very, very bad.
Yeah. Do you think the fear is warranted, right? Because we had a lot of power plants, right? Nuclear power plants in the country, and they were clean, they were efficient, but we had a couple of mishaps or a few mishaps
We
throughout
had
the
Three
years.
Mile Island.
3 Mile Island.
We had a movie called The China Syndrome. We had Chernobyl.
Chernobyl, yeah.
We had Fukushima.
Fukushima, yeah. That's the last one that we all got to see unfold in front of our eyes, yeah.
And there have been other mishaps. It takes 8 years to get a nuclear reactor online, could be 16 years. So it's become an impossible dream. I believe we have to find a happy medium, because I can tell you right now, you are going to have oil spills. Every year we have small and large oil spills equal to one Exxon Valdez every year.
Wow.
If you want automotive transportation, 44,000 people a year are gonna get killed. If you want airplanes, there's going to be aviation mishaps. If oil is transported, there's going to, as I said, there's going to be oil spills, whether it's by vessel, pipe, or tanker, a truck tanker. And so we have to find that happy medium where we can have a secure nuclear battery, nuclear facility that is regulated with enough security on it so that if something does go bad, it can be contained.
Yeah. Yeah, everything has a cost, right? In life, human life, or environmental, thing. And you mentioned the deaths in traffic accidents, right? In cars, but also you got to take into consideration the deaths from breathing all the fumes and all the particulates that the cars and
You're
the
so
whole
correct.
automotive. Yeah.
The automobile deaths are just the beginning of those are the kinetic deaths. There's environmental death. There's the risk of environmental justice. There is the disruption of our planet. There's huge trade-offs. Everybody wants to eat sausage. No one wants to see the sausage being made.
Yes, that's true. 60, yeah. Every time I eat meat, I think about that. It's like 60, we kill 60 billion animals a year. That's a crazy, I mean, there's only 8 billion of us here on Earth, right? We're killing so many things we're consuming, right? And it's weird. Like everything that we put in our mouths, something has to die for it. So it's a weird thing. There's a cost to everything that we do, and somehow we have to decide if it's okay or not. And do you think is warranted, like the fear that is driving for these nuclear plants to be decommissioned, right? Because we all fear those events, and that's why they're
There was a little girl sleeping, and she was having a nightmare, and there was a great big monster at the foot of the bed. The monster was screaming and growling, and she said, "What's going to happen next?" And the monster says, "It's your dream."
it's your dream.
So the fear is justified. But what can we do with that fear? Can we bring fear and hope together to create a better reality. I'm not trying to give you poetry. I'm trying to give you a way forward. And there are people in our society, especially in energy, who are paid to peddle fear. The people who are in favor of solar, they want to talk about all the attributes. The people who are paid to do something else, they want to say, well, solar is inefficient, it's economically unwise, etc. The people who are in favor of batteries will say, yes, let's go for them. Other people will say rare earth metals. They'll talk about brown green versus green green. Remember, a lot of the green you're asking for takes brown, dirty, heavy industries, and that is batteries included, irrespective of the fact that you've got a wonderful DIY operation going. And part of what my mission has been, part of what I did in my book, Internal Combustion, was try to give you the facts and for people to understand. And when I autograph my books, Internal Combustion, I always say a century of lies deserves a moment of truth. The people of power are in power. The people of power crave the power. Power, meaning energy, is a way to control people by giving it to them, denying it to them, and charging them for it. You're not getting any anti-corporate prose out of me or any anti-capitalist prose. I'm a heavy corporate guy. I'm a heavy capitalist. My only complaint is that I don't have enough corporations and I don't have enough capital. But we want just capital. We want non-exploitative capital. And we want capital and corporations and capitalism to proliferate in a way that advances society.
Yeah. I just recently watched the Amazon documentary where they posed that question. It's like, is it bad that Amazon's making all this money? And well, I mean, they spent so much time building that enterprise, and I think what we all have an issue with is the fact that they're making so much money while they're not taking a lot of the liability, right? Like there's a lot of traffic accidents in their delivery vans, for example, and they basically are not liable because they're basically operating those as like external companies.
That's not the issue. That's not the issue. As far as I'm concerned, they could make 10 times more money than they're making now. The issue is not how much money are they making. The issue is how much damage are they doing while they're making it. Yeah. And when you accrue too much power, and that could be mercantile power, that could be distribution power, too much power into too few hands, you make it impossible for society to advance. So if the mom and pop store cannot exist, if it's possible to disconnect your show based on Amazon servers because somebody thinks your show has gone too far. Yeah. These are things. In fact, my own show, the Edwin Black Show, is going to be dealing with these issues. You were on the show last week. We spoke about batteries. Next week, next Thursday, this episode of yours will come out probably after that. But we're talking about reining in the Silicon Valley titans. Competition is a good thing, and when the end user agreement supersedes law, supersedes the Constitution, supersedes our rights, it's time for us to take notice.
Yes, yeah, I agree there.
But
yeah,
I will tell you this. Amazon is selling one of my books every half hour.
There you go.
In
They're
fact,
good at what they do.
they probably sold 3 just while we were talking.
There
So
you
I
go.
don't object to that. I want them to succeed. But you know what? We want wonderful vehicles to succeed. We
Yeah.
just don't want them to run anyone over on the way to success.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And do you think electric is the way of the future? You think that is the thing that is going to be better? It's just, are
You
they going
know,
to make a better
when you
future?
say electric, you need to qualify that question. Are you talking about personal mobility, automobiles? Are you talking about mass transit? Or are you talking energy in general, or all of it?
Well, yeah, all of it, right? Because I think we have, battery power electric vehicles. I think right now can become all three of those. Um, we have like electric cars have a huge battery, and there is people think of a future where that battery it sits in your garage most of the time, and you could use that as backup. And that's true. I mean, it's a huge battery, 100 kilowatt hour battery, just sitting there in your garage doing nothing. Yeah, use it. Plug it in. Have a two-way connection.
I think the danger is asking the question, because the question presupposes one solution. There are many solutions. So instead
Mm-hmm.
of saying, is EV the way to go, maybe we need to say, how many different ways are there to go?
To go.
91% of the automotive fuel in the world is petroleum.
Mm-hmm.
67% of all petroleum is used for transportation. There are many other ways to fuel a car. Alcohol fuels. The original fuel for car was alcohol fuels. It was killed by the Rockefellers in conjunction with others through prohibition so they could move oil. So you could propel a car by alcohol fuels, by CNG, by propane, by electricity, by sunlight. There are many by hydrogen. There are, of course, hydrogen gas. The hydrogen itself, when it makes electricity, is just being used
Fuel
as
cell.
a feedstock. It's a HEV, a hydrogen EV. So there are many different ways, and the answer is use the best way that's right for you. If you're sitting on in Iowa on ethanol farms, there's
Yeah.
no reason why you should not be running on ethanol. Now, it's already been shown. I was in a film called Pump, and it was produced by the gentleman you were on TV with me yesterday when you were on my show. Right now, ethanol is E15.
Okay.
You could run it on E85. Now, your people did not see my show yesterday, but I was running a Chevrolet in California on water. We had an off-the-shelf Chevy hydrogen car right off the factory floor. We went to Santa Monica Boulevard to a Shell station. A water canopy on top dropped down the water. The water was electrolyzed into hydrogen. The hydrogen gas went into the car. When it was combined with oxygen, it made electricity. And the car was able to drive all weekend on one tank of hydrogen with no engine. No engine. And that's not just me. There are a lot of people who have done that. All the guys on the show have done that. You're sitting out there in California, and it would probably amaze you to know that you could just reach into the ocean and distill the water and then electrolyze it. Out comes hydrogen, and you're driving on hydrogen generated electricity based on electrolysis of water. And guess what? Nobody died. Nobody deployed the Navy to the Middle East. And that's just one possibility. Of course, you're in California, so you know that you're slowly building these hydrogen fueling stations on the hydrogen highway. But there's nothing stopping us from putting these out now everywhere. The stories of why we can't, the regulations, the lobbyists, it's all malarkey. If we really needed to find the solution could be implemented faster than we think. But if we wanted to get off of oil and we worked at it 24/7 and we had an all-out Manhattan project, it would still take 11 years because of a concept called scrappage. You have a car, you're not going to get rid of it for 11 years.
Yeah.
Maybe 9 years, maybe 12 years. And so it takes time before these new technologies are adopted, phase in. Now, what is the single biggest factor that could phase in electric vehicles? Jehu, what is it?
The one single factor that could phase in? Well, I mean, production. If car manufacturers actually made them, actually wanted to get on board with them, I think that would speed up the thing, because I think Tesla shows that we customers.
All right, but wait a minute.
We like them. We want them.
One guy could make the decision. 4 guys could make the decision right now. Who are they?
Well, Jeff Bezos is one of them because he's got all the money in the world.
No. It's the Post Office, Federal Express, UPS, and Frito-Lay.
Frito-Lay? Okay.
They have the largest fleets.
What? Frito-Lay.
And so by requiring alternative fuels or electric vehicles, not just 5 or 10 for a press release, but really deploying electric vehicles. You get the vehicles, you get the mass production, you get the charging stations. In fact, if the post office itself did it, just the post office alone, the post office could do it. The post office runs through a vehicle, I think once every 2 or 3 years. They have to replace it. They could refuel them right in their own PO facilities. Those PO facilities could then be opened up for municipal fleets, university fleets, corporate fleets, personal cars. It can be done.
Yeah.
The problem is, who doesn't want to do it, and why don't they want to do it? And it's all about this.
Everybody that's making money off of oil, which is a lot of people, a lot of industries too. And yeah, I think that, right? Like, I think the reluctance of like car manufacturers to make electric cars is real, right? It's not just something that we people like me make up, right? Like, it's pretty evident. You mentioned yesterday about a car that they on purpose made ugly, right? And we've always been saying that.
That's Honda had the CNG car. It was a total fake out. They had it just so they could lower their average of their cafeteria, their CAFE mileage. They made it ugly. They wouldn't sell it, and it was a total fake out. It came with a home refueler. They killed the home refueling company called Fuel Maker. They did it. They tried to do it secretly with an unidentified corporation that only had a number, not a name, but they were caught. Honda, you did it. You didn't need to do it. There's millions of CNG cars in the world. Why couldn't you leave the one you had in the United States?
Well, that story it runs parallel with General Motors and the EV1. It's the same thing. They killed that car. And they said because Americans didn't want them, because nobody wanted to buy it,
No,
because it wasn't
that's
ready.
a lie. That's a lie. Uh, the electric car was invented when, Jehu?
Well, it was the first car. I think they just unearthed a Porsche from like 1920 or something, like way back then, that was electric.
Jehu,
It started in the 1800s, right?
1835.
Yeah, okay.
The hydrogen fuel cell was 1838.
Wow. Yeah, that's a long time to figure that out. Yeah.
All the vehicles in the United States at the beginning, almost all, at the beginning of the 20th century, all the trucks and cars were all electric vehicles.
Yeah, wasn't like New York City like just lined up with like electric cars and charging stations, that big things that had exposed wires? I saw it at the Peterson Museum. I saw these charging stations.
Those were taxi cabs.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
In New York City. And of course, the concept of the electrant was Thomas Edison, would look like a kind of a parking meter.
Yeah.
You park your car while you're out shopping, doing what you're doing. Your car would recharge. That was invented in 1899 and was proliferating in 1912, 1913. All of that was killed. And in fact, the electric cars that Thomas Edison was trying to perfect with Henry Ford were quiet, they were safe, they were non-smoky, and they were killed by internal combustion, by the forces of internal combustion, because they wanted muscle cars. They wanted cars with a rumble. They wanted cars for he-men. And they thought that the EV was a ladies' car. And
it was marketed as a ladies' car, right? Because you wouldn't have to crank it outside.
that's right.
Yes. Okay. So the electric cars. Teslas are chick cars, essentially. It turns out.
I'm sure they weren't chick cars, but they were marketed to women. Yes. In fact, they were marketed to the wives of Thomas Edison and Henry Ford were in some famous advertising.
Ah, there you go. Yeah, so the electric car's been around forever. But GM killed that EV1 because they just had no interest in making it. In fact, they don't want to make electric cars. Right now, I think they're being forced by the simple fact that the other startups that have no ties to traditional.
The unions don't want electric cars.
The unions. Why the unions?
Well, because what does the electric car not have?
What it doesn't have? Well,
An engine.
an engine. It doesn't have an engine. It has a motor, though. How is the motor and engine different?
Well, the power goes right to the wheels. So the point is, if you're not going to have these complex engine
systems
and engines with cylinders, internal combustion, valves, spark plugs, there's incredible simplicity to the electric vehicle.
Yes, it's some windings, some metal, couple bearings, and you're out the door.
How did you get interested in batteries?
So I've been a tinkerer for a long time, right? When I was a kid, I didn't go to school. I wasn't allowed to go to school in Mexico, and so I had to kind of learn on my own. And I used to tinker, and my dad used to fix TVs and all this stuff. So I got interested in electronics on that side, right? But then a few years ago, I wanted to buy a car. I didn't own a car, and I thought, well, I want to buy something that's, innovative, something that's cool. And I looked in the market, and BMW was doing the same thing they've been doing forever. And the only thing that was exciting at the time was the electric cars. And Tesla had just announced the Model S. And I thought, well, hell, that's a car.
Now that's a hell of a good-looking car.
Yes, I thought, I want one of those. But the problem is that I couldn't buy it because they were not in production yet. And they wouldn't be in production for another 2 years. And so I thought, well, hell, if I can't buy one, I'm going to make one. And I thought, I always liked these buses, but these things always sucked. They were underpowered. They were a pain. in the rear to keep running because the maintenance is really high. You have to adjust the valves.
Actually, they were a pain in the front, not just the rear.
Yes, they have to adjust the valves and the carburetor jets, and they're just a nightmare to run. Really, I don't know how. I mean, you literally have to every 2,000 miles you have to service it. You know, you have to adjust the brakes, do all this thing. And I thought for a modern lifestyle, they don't fit, right? And so I thought I want to own a bus, a classic car, but I just can't go through that. And I thought, well, hell, what if I used to think back in the day, like 20 years ago, I used to think, if I could just put a modern engine in one of these old cars, man, that would be amazing. And I thought it's too complex. The gas engines are too complex. They have so many systems, so many hoses and wires, and now computers.
That's exactly the point. And those all take human workers. It takes a lot of unions. And so the unions are opposed. Remember, every time somebody improves the system, somebody opposes the improvement because of the way that they were doing it. When the automobile came into wide adoption, it was the saddle industry and the Pony Express opposed.
Saddle industry?
Of course, the saddlery industry.
Okay. Yeah, that's a flaw, right? That's a flaw in us humans. Like, we think that jobs are going to disappear with every new technology, but
that's not a flaw in human nature. That's a flaw in corporate conduct. There's a big difference.
Is it? Because we all think that, and we're like, yeah, if I'm a mechanic, and there's not going to be, mechanic jobs anymore, we panic. But we don't think that if the new technology comes out, there's going to be other jobs created to service that new technology.
That's a different story, because you can't tell the guy on the Keystone pipeline you're going to make solar panels in 2 years. That guy's got to pay the rent at the end of the month. And so that is a different story. But I think there are separate levels in which these things must be evaluated. And that is, what is the benefit to society? And it's hard to assess the benefit to society or to mankind because we can't get a straight answer. And we can't get a straight answer because so many people are paid to give the false answer. And so that means it's full-time employment for me, because I'm trying to excavate the historical truth and the current truth, truth in fact and context. We don't like to use the word truth because there is no truth, but there's fact and context. And this is what you are doing right on your show. You're asking the uncomfortable question and hoping to get a more comforting answer. Unfortunately, when you ask me an uncomfortable question, the response is even more uncomfortable.
I see. That's how it works for you. Yeah. I mean, no, it's true. Yeah, some of these questions are uncomfortable for someone, right? Anything that you say, it's gonna be uncomfortable for someone. There's always people on both sides of the thing. And recently, in the last few years, it seems so polarized. Every subject, you're either far right or far left. Like, no, there's almost like no centrists in the world now, where you're like, can we take information and just look at it based on facts and and not be super biased, right? But I guess we're biased. I think we're humans, and that's what we do. But yeah, I mean, I try to be balanced, I think, in looking at everything, right? And that's one of the reasons why I find it the task of like writing a book so daunting, because I'm like, I don't know if what I'm doing is right. I think it's right. I'm doing it because I think it's right, but I could be proven wrong. You know what I mean? Like, some other perspective. I could talk to someone like you, and our conversation could leave me going like, wait a minute,
Jehu,
I'm not doing the right thing.
The object is not to be proven wrong. The object is to be proven correct.
Correct. Yeah.
And one of the ways that I do that is I have a team of researchers around the world, and they have one job: to prove I was wrong. And if they can't prove I was wrong, then they try to prove that I'm correct. And
Okay.
so it isn't that we have a shadow, which is the absence of light. We actually make sure that we focus the light
Light.
and shine a light on what is documentable fact.
Yeah, yeah. So whenever I do something, it has to. I have like little check marks, right? It has to be meaningful for people. It has to be. It has to do good for the environment. It has to serve a useful purpose for people, right? And it has to be inspiring, right? If I'm not inspiring people to do a thing, then it's not going to go anywhere, right?
And that's and that is a perfect approach. Is can you in fact inspire? If your facts are going to put people to sleep, then you can just sell them noxious fumes. But if your facts are going to enliven people, inspire people, and lead to that spark plug, that chain reaction that will change a life, change one life, you change all of history, all of the future. And so that is one of the great benefits of writing, but it's a daunting challenge, and it's a huge responsibility. There are so many ways to do it wrong. Excuse me. There are very few ways to do it right, and that's one of the things I've tried to do over the past 50 years.
Wow. Okay. So what is your most popular title? Of all the ones
Well, I have two types of titles. I have petropolitical titles. I invented the word petropolitics, and I have genocide. So it's all oil or genocide. My most popular book is IBM and the Holocaust. It's sold in 190 countries.
Wow.
And then I have that is about how IBM organized all 6 phases of the Holocaust: the identification of the Jews, the exclusion from society, their confiscation of their assets, the ghettoization, the deportation, and even the extermination of the Jews. And so that's very popular now, even though it was published 20 years ago, because these threats are arising again. And don't worry, IBM's attorney is not going to call you tomorrow morning. He's probably going to find a rock to hide under. And but right now I'm blessed. It's the number one. It's still the number one all year almost. It's been the number one military history book on Amazon. My second most proliferated book is War Against the Weak, about eugenics. And race science, where the American elites tried to destroy people who look like you and people who look like me. And after that, I have many oil books like Internal Combustion, which is the history of oil. I have British Petroleum and the Red Line Agreement. The Plan, which is what occurs if Iran cuts off the oil from the Persian Gulf. 20% of the world's oil is controlled out of a small choke point. It's 40% of the seaborne oil. And in fact, we just saw an attack several days ago by the Houthis against the Ras Tanura terminal, which is 1/3 of the way toward crippling world oil. Nazi nexus and financing the flames. So flames, I have a lot, and people can see it at edwinblack.com. And it's been a complete pleasure for me to connect with you. You're exactly the kind of person that I want to talk to, and it's been a pleasure for me to connect to your audience.
Well,
thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I want to thank you for coming and talking to me. It's been enlightening to talk to an author. And we'll have you back. I'm sure you're working on a new title probably for the future. Whenever you're ready to talk about that, we'll have you back and talk about
I'm working on 17 different books.
Okay.
And if anyone wants to look at my stuff, it's edwinblack.com. If you want to see this guy on my show, it's theedwinblackshow.com. He was just on there. He made an outstanding contribution to our question about batteries and microgrids, and I promise I will indeed be back.
All right. Thank you for this. Okay. See you later.